what's going on, guys? Michael from Bedell Property Management here, and we're at Equip Exposition 2022, hanging out at the Echo Means Business Social Media Lounge. And we got a fun chat for you today with this cool group of guys here, and we're going to introduce ourselves and then dive on in. So next to me, I got my friend
Elias Baltazar with Baltazar's Lawn Care based out in Russellville, Alabama.
Nice.
What's going on, everyone? Vince the Lawn Engineer here, content creator for DIY Lawn Care.
Sweet. Jared Temkin, J&J Property Pros, Stanfordville, New York.
Awesome.
Cool. And so today's chat, we're just going to be talking about battery-powered equipment, this new phenomenon that has just taken over the industry. And we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and everything in between. And so before we dive in, I think it's important in any conversation to kind of build some context. And so I think you guys should probably know kind of how much equipment we have and what experience we have. We've all certainly been in the industry a while, but this equipment is newer, certainly on the commercial end. And so in my business, I've got a couple battery-powered chainsaws. I've got the Echo battery PAS system. And so that's been nice because I've been able to use different attachments and kind of see it across different aspects of the industry. But it's really the last couple years that I've had a lot of experience with the battery-powered equipment. How about you?
Same. It's the same because down in Alabama we cut a lot of, fields, tall grass. So we just started adding some new battery this year, 2022, and we're still learning because we cut a lot of HOAs. We're a company that cuts a lot of HOAs up to 130 homes a day.
Oh wow! Man.
Yes. So to add in fully, like make the transition to battery, I'm not there yet because we're still trying them out. But when it comes to small jobs, for example, when we do a 2-3 yard mulch, you have to blow it back off. There's no need for you to grab your 9010 to blow that off. Get your battery power handheld blower and just blow it off, blow it back to the beds. But when it comes to like HOAs, and we have to mow 4 guys 8 hours straight and 4 guys weed eating, just think about how many battery I'll need.
Right.
I was just going to ask that. Like, you guys would probably need a ton of batteries.
Exactly. Right. So as of now, I'm not ready to make that transition.
Got it.
From gas to fully battery powered. So that's my thinking. But when it comes to small jobs or a couple of hedge trimmings that we need to do, maybe 4 or 5 shrubs, we grab our battery powered trimmer just to kind of knock them out. So that's just my thinking, my thought about that.
That's perfect. Cool. So Vince, what's your experience with battery power?
So by day, I'm a civil engineer.
Oh, cool.
And my company, although we do engineering work, we also have a subsidiary that does maintenance on green stormwater infrastructure around like the DC area, the Philadelphia area. And so we have crews that go out maintaining these with their equipment. Now, specifically in DC, there's definitely been a push to go battery. A lot of bans on more from a noise perspective, so they don't want those gas-powered engines running and disturbing the residents. So definitely something as a company our subsidiary is looking into, is investing into that battery equipment. I think shows like this are great to try all the different things out. It's definitely kind of like the main topic is battery, right? So like all the manufacturers here
It's a hot topic.
It is.
Very hot topic. Are running, more on that later.
Yeah, for real.
But a lot of companies here are showcasing the latest and greatest in battery technology, and it's great for companies to come out here and get to try things, get their hands on things, and try things out. Now, as a DIY, lawn guy and homeowner, I do have a few pieces of battery-powered equipment, and one thing that I like about it is that it's just so easy to just get up and go.
Yes.
I mean, like a blower, for example, just boom, turn it on. That's it. It just works every time, right? The mower, just turn it on. No pulling cords or anything. No maintenance even. So no oil changes or anything like that. But you do have the issue with runtime and charging time, and
Yes.
maybe you got to buy a few additional batteries to keep going, and then for those running their landscape businesses and running off a battery, it's that investment in the tools are cheap, but the batteries are where the large expenses are. So buying into those battery packs, dedicating to a battery system, a battery platform from most likely one company. You're probably going to be dedicating to like one specific company because all the tools will run off of that battery. That's kind of my
I
take
think
on
it definitely makes it easier if you're able to just pick one and roll with it, so you're not changing out batteries or different crews are going out with different things. You just have that one set system and you're able to roll with it. I know for us, the transition just helped so much because we were doing some rooftop stuff down in the city and we had to hand sweep everything because of noise ordinances and like all the rules and regulations. But when we had our little blowers, it cut down 2-3 hours per job. It saved a lot of time instead of one guy there sweeping all day. You just blow it. And it was just fantastic. And even back up north when we're in Dutchess County, the weed whacker, it just lasts us all day. The hedge trimmers, it's just been great because again, we have a system in place where you have batteries charging and then you put in the new ones and you're always refreshing. So the guys, we have the option of you have the 2-cycle weed whacker, so we're still kind of split. We're still doing 2-cycle and we're still doing battery just to see. And at first all the guys were kind of laughing. They're like, that's adorable, that's so cute. Battery, are you joking? And so anyway, now they're picking the battery over the 2-cycle one because it's just less fatigue, less noise. They don't have to, they wear their ear protection, but it's so quiet they could hold a conversation. It's not going to matter, and you can start at whatever time, finish at whatever time you need to. But it's been a game changer for us. It's definitely helped, especially because New York is trying to be more eco-friendly and all that jazz. It's definitely something that helps our business grow. We've been liking it. But, again, like you were saying, runtime too. If you got to go all day, you do need a substantial amount of batteries right now to make that rock and roll. But I think technology's getting there, little by little.
Yes.
So to recap, so you've got some like weed whips and the PAS system?
PAS system, hedge trimmers,
Okay.
chainsaws. We pretty much, all the attachments.
So you have a lot of battery power.
We do. Actually, most of our wall is starting to become battery powered. We're
All
hoping
right.
to transition completely. We're
So
hoping.
you guys you're from what I'm gathering, you're kind of the opposite of what Eli's
Yeah.
got, where
Well, I
you
mean,
only
your
have a couple
style-
pieces. Am I
Yes,
saying that
couple
right?
pieces.
And you have a lot,
We do.
and then maybe
We
you're
do.
somewhere in between.
I have 4 pieces.
4 pieces.
pieces.
Okay.
3 blowers and 1 mower.
Blowers and 1 mower. Okay.
Yeah.
So not a ton of handheld equipment, like in terms of like a string trimmer or edger or anything like
Eventually.
that. Eventually.
I'll collect a few.
Cool. All right. No, I think that's just good context for everybody at home because it is newer, and based on the feedback that we're probably going to give people in this conversation, have we used it for 2 days? Have we used it for 2 years? We'd certainly be lying if we said we've been using it for decades
Yeah.
because
It's just new.
But
It is
most
new.
people would
Yeah.
read between the lines and go, "What are these guys talking about? It wasn't here decades ago."
No.
So cool. All right. So we've already kind of touched on some of the cons and the pros to it, but you were mentioning that your guys find less fatigue.
Less fatigue,
And tell us a little bit more about that. Does that have to do with like the weight distribution of it, or the weight of the
The
equipment?
fact that it's
or?
not rattling as much as when that motor's going.
Okay.
It's just flip a switch and you go. There's no cranking. It's just a button, and they just get to rock and roll and go. It's a little bit of a learning curve. You got it because it revs differently. Because for a 2-cycle engine, you can kind of finesse it a little bit.
Yes.
With this, you're learning how to finesse differently. For the hedge trimmers, it's just been fantastic because you can run almost all day on one battery. We experimented. We're like, let's see how long this. And it was a serious, huge privet hedge, and they were like, let's see how long it lasts. And no fatigue. They could go all day with that thing, and it worked out in a fantastic way.
So I guess
But we're still learning. We're still learning.
Just thinking out loud here, a lot of people they you know, the big I guess bugaboo about battery powered is really the run time, or or at least that's a perception a lot of people have. But when I heard you say that, I thought about from my experiences of doing a lot of hedge trimming, a lot of our gas powered hedge trimmers, you get like an hour or two out of the tank, kind of depending on how much you're throttling up and down. But after that couple hours, you've got to take the time to maybe go back to the trailer and refuel or whatever. And so if you're able to run it all day long, am I correct in saying that actually that speeds the project up a little bit for that obligatory 5-10 minutes?
It was actually more efficient. It did save time because, like you were saying, they were taking time to have to refill the 2-cycle, and you have that thing idling. As you're not going, it still has to idle, so you're not there going like this all day. So literally, you stop, it stops. So they were up there for 4 hours, and if we did 2-cycle, they would have had to have filled it 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to. And then it was a battery. Took it out, passed it, and then passed the next one up and just keep going. So it was just more efficient, which was surprising because everybody was like, again, laughing at first because they're like, guys, are you crazy? But it's as technology is going, we're getting better and better. And for certain application, it's going to be harder. Like you're doing a massive amount in one day. So I could see how that would be difficult to do. But I think as technology progresses and batteries get more advanced, and it may be definitely an easier thing to use in the future. We still got a lot to learn. There's still so much technology.
Question for you: how big are your properties, like average size?
So we do a lot of estates. So by us, it's kind of a lot of vineyards, a lot of horse farms. So as far as acreage goes and extensive gardens, because we mostly focus on gardens. That's our focus, and mowing and weed whacking just kind of happened because it was a request.
Okay. So we're talking acres, not just
acres, like 6
4,000.
to 8.
Okay, wow.
Versus maybe Eli's on the other end, where it's more like a subdivision with a whole bunch of half-acre,
which is a lot of
houses,
hustle,
right?
Yeah,
that is
beds you got to trim around.
That is a lot of hustle in a day, and thank God, like a crew can be at a job, and the property is large enough where they're going to be there for a while, and then you can do multiple ones. But a lot of these estates, gardens are extensive. So again, we're just cutting down on weed whacking and mowing time so that the guys and the whole crew can focus on that gardening aspect, because that's what our focus is. And that's where those hedge trimmers are handy for us, because you're always trimming boxers, you're always trimming privet, you're always in their season, of course, but you're always using that equipment. And just not having 2-cycle blowing in your face all day is refreshing. It really is, because we were used to our 2-cycle Red Max for a while, and it was great, but you're breathing in fumes all day long, and so being able to just have battery powered, the guys are loving it because they get to go home, they don't smell like 2-cycle. So that's the other perk. You're not smelling like 2-cycle at the end of the day.
That is an interesting.
It was for crew safety too. That's why we also did it.
So being that you've used, out of all of us, sounds like you've invested the most in it.
So far.
Fuel certainly has been a hot topic this past year as the price has certainly year over year increased. Have you noticed increase to your bottom line based on the fact that you're potentially not outlaying so many dollars for fuel?
We're believing we're going to see at the end of the season, because we still have our equipment is still gas and 2-cycle at some portions, and we're kind of transitioning into that just so it's not a full, we're taking all this away and making all of us get used to this. Because again, even for me, it's a learning curve a little bit. So we just, the transition is slow, and to see the numbers we're going to have to see at the end of the year. Okay. But I would assume you are correct. I would assume there should be some cost savings.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were tracking things month by month, if you can see comparison
as
to
last month,
as
we're starting,
or last year.
Yes,
yeah.
a little bit. It's going to be fun to see the full scope at the end of the season, but we will be saving.
Cool.
We definitely will be saving after the initial investment.
Yeah. I mean, there's the initial investment, but
exactly.
I more meant I know a lot of companies will track fuel costs and then even separately equipment fuel costs. And so were you noticing as this year's progressed, wow, we're spending a lot less money on equipment fuel.
Believe it or not, yes.
And then in turn, I've heard it said that savings is what can allow for additional investments into the platform.
If you look at the big picture, that's exactly right. If you're looking at the big picture, it might be that initial, but in the long run, you're playing the long game. It pays for itself.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I was actually interested to know, Do your clients value that you use battery-powered equipment? Is that something that you can market?
We actually had a request for it, and they're willing to, in our market, pay more. I don't think that would happen everywhere. It's just our area. They are willing to pay more for that service. They don't want the noise. They don't want the fumes because they're very eco-conscious. But again, the biggest perk for them is they don't want to hear it because they want to enjoy their property, and we're in and out, ninja style. Now we won't be making much noise. So again, it is requested in our area, and for some areas, it might not even be necessary. They might not care about certain things, but for our area, it was super conducive to what we were doing.
I would imagine that, if you're having to invest in a new platform, like some areas require it, and that's your only option now.
Like New York City.
Yeah, and so in turn, you would have to charge more. Like I know in where I'm from in Michigan, there's a few communities that already have, and then there's one that I used to do some work in that this is maybe 5 years ago, certainly before the advancements that we have now that would help. In terms of efficiency, but back then they were considering that, and I had some very transparent conversations with my clients in terms of okay, well, if your budget, let's just use round numbers, is $10K a year, you probably should redirect double or more. It should go to 20 or 25 because we're now having to invest in new equipment, and so that's going to be passed on to you guys. And then in turn, certainly back then, there was a major efficiency gap between where gas-powered stood at the moment and battery-powered. And so in turn, if it's going to take us twice as long to prune your shrubs now or twice as long to do your lawn, that cost will certainly be passed on to you guys. And so, you're more than welcome to make any decisions you want in your community. It's where you choose to live, and it's the lifestyle you want, but that will come at a cost, and that isn't it's not a threat. It's not a hypothesis. It's just a simple business fact.
Right. I mean, the funny part by us is because of the efficiency, we can actually we can charge the same, but we're actually making more profit in the end because of the efficiency, the fuel savings. Again, like you were saying, technology has increased. If we were talking back then in that initial investment, it was way too expensive. It wouldn't have worked. We wanted to do this years ago, but the technology wasn't there yet. Now that we're starting to see all this new stuff coming out, everybody's going that direction, we could actually charge. We don't have to make it that much. They're willing to pay more, but we don't. We keep it the same as if we were doing, because it's just efficiency for us. So we don't have to. We just keep it the same. It's interesting.
Yeah, one thing I like that you said about the noise. That's one thing I've tried to pass on to my guys, my employees, because at these HOAs that we cut, most of them are elderly.
Wow.
So you think about it, you're working there 8 hours and you're hearing the mower, the weed eater. By 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, when it's blowing off, they don't want to hear no more noise,
Yeah.
So I've tried to tell the guys, hey, we probably need to invest in some battery-powered blowers.
Yeah.
That way, they're not listening to that 90-10 blowing off the property, back patio. They're having a good time with their family, their grandkids.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've looked into. But when you have an employee, it's kind of hard because the guys. I don't like battery power. If it's a solo operator, I would probably go fully battery powered. But when you have 6, 7 guys weed whacking or blowing off, we don't want that. We want the 90-10 or
Right.
And you want to have your guys happy.
That's always that matters. That
so
matters.
I'm kind of in the process of convincing them at least with the battery powered blowers.
Right.
Just to kind of give the homeowners, less noise.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've noticed about, battery power and gas. It's less noise with battery power.
I was going to say, yours is such an interesting dynamic because you guys, the production for the day is massive. So I'm trying to think of, do you have batteries as and a 2-cycle option, or is it just 2-cycle option for the guys?
2-cycle option.
Option.
We've tried. I have buddies that have battery power, weed eaters, weed whackers, but guys didn't. We tried out the HOA, and of course, nobody said, well, you don't need to go full throttle, you know.
Right, right.
But when you have 6, 7 guys, you never know how they're weeding. They want to do it their own,
Exactly.
in their own speed pace, you know.
I know for years weed whacking, it took a little bit because I'm used to the 2-cycle, because you can control the rev differently.
Yeah.
And I think that would be fun if in the future they can help you control the rev for a battery.
Kind of like a dimmer switch
Yes.
idea.
Kind of, and we kind of figured out with the Echo weed whackers, you can kind of do it a little
Yeah,
bit, but
you
it
can
takes a
feather
little
it.
bit more finesse, and you just got to get used to it. And that's the hard part is again keeping the crew happy because you don't want to piss them off. They're
Exactly.
used to that, and
Yes.
to force it is
They're
not
already out there
necessary.
in the 90
Yeah,
degrees heat. and
exactly. You don't want to make life harder.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
I hear
we do
you.
a lot
Tough
of
enough to
common
keep
area.
people as
Yeah.
as it is. You don't really want to scare them away
No.
with maybe something they
No.
don't want. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, we do a lot of common area. Like our biggest HOA is 130 homes, and there's probably like 4 acres of common area.
Man.
So we need a lot. We use a lot of weed whacking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with battery power weed whacking, man, we probably need change every 30, 40 minutes. So that's one reason we haven't made the transition yet, but we're slowly doing it. At some point, it's going to be a time where we're going to.
Yeah, I will say, like, even for regular re-whacking with that battery, we get about a half an hour, and you got to change out a battery. But we're going, you get charge time from going to client because it's a little bit of a trek. But if, like you were saying, if you're going one after the next, I could see how that could be.
Yes, because there's
Because a lot of others is hedge trimming too.
They have a lot of pine trees or a lot of the arborvitaes, at the common area. I mean, we're not weed whacking 4 acres, but you know
Right.
what I'm talking
Right,
about.
right, right,
Ditches, there's.
There's a lot.
Exactly.
There's a
So
lot.
You
yeah,
get
so-
into acreage and there'll be mature trees and other obstacles that you got to trim
Rocks,
around. Yep.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. No, those are all really, really good points, and we certainly hit on some of the good and a little bit of the bad. But I know one of the big cons that's always stood out to me about battery-powered equipment, just in general, and this is a really brand neutral statement, is like when you look at gas-powered equipment, it doesn't matter which brand you use. Any gas will work on it, right? As long as it's, doesn't have a bunch of ethanol in it, you're probably golden, right? Versus, at least now, all these different brands that have released battery-powered equipment, they all kind of have a proprietary battery for the most part.
Right.
And so in turn, the verbiage that's often used is you're investing in a platform. And then the idea is once you've invested in the batteries for said equipment provider or brand, now you're likely to continue to invest and buy their other attachments or tools because those same batteries will work across that platform. And I've always seen it as in order for battery to reach full adoption, we've already spoken on the runtime and that being part of it, but what could certainly abate that or make that a lot less of an issue is some type of cross-platform functionality and maybe all the brands sort of as odd as it sounds, having a collective mindset and figuring out some type of more universal battery that can be used across all platforms. Because otherwise, I think that's certainly what has made me in the past a little gun shy about trying something new or getting into something new is when I feel like I've already made this investment into something. It's like I got to do what now? I gotta like start all over again. What do you guys think about that? Is that just me, or is that
that's
a
a legit
common
risk.
perception?
After you.
I think it is. I mean, I was kind of mentioning it earlier. I mean, you gotta pretty much dedicate to a brand and stick with that battery platform to be, I think, competitive. If you're going to go off and buy different brands of maybe a trimmer and a different brand hedge trimmer maybe, and then a different brand blower, and then you've got the different batteries for that, and then you have to have the setup to charge those different batteries. I mean, it's just it's a mess. There's the convenience of just having and sticking with the one manufacturer.
So Vince, if per se everybody got on the same page and they were kind of all adaptable to each other, do you think that would be less of a quandary?
Like a USB?
Yeah, kind of something. Would you be less concerned?
I'm not sure because there's a lot that goes into these platforms. I mean, we
Right.
we were all at Echo's headquarters and heard Jason Wilkes' presentation on battery-powered equipment. I mean, there's a lot that goes into controlling those battery packs. You have basically a computer chip in every single battery pack. The chargers have a computer chip. They talk to one another. They're monitoring things like voltage and amperage, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into that. And then there's also the battery cells themselves. The cells themselves are somewhat universal. There's only a handful of battery manufacturers that are actually making the individual cells that go into each battery pack, right? But there's probably going to be some liability for each manufacturer or each company that's manufacturing this battery equipment on how that is managed, because thermal runoff is a serious thing. Right?
Yes.
We kind of experienced yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you can't control that properly, you can have a serious issue, risk of fire. And so, you know, I don't know if it can go universal. I don't know. It may, but there's also
That'd be great.
It would be.
every piece of equipment and the challenge that every manufacturer is going to have is the balance between putting enough cells in a unit to give you enough charge, enough runtime, also balancing the weight of that unit and the feel in your hands and the balance of everything. And so it's going to be tough to come out with different designs that use a universal battery, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that statement. I just think that that's a barrier to mass adoption. When people feel like they can buy, maybe a battery platform, and now they, have the whole host of tools, they can go get whatever they want and not feel like they're burdened down. Versus, I think that in turn that's what makes maybe some of people who aren't looking at this from like a business mindset or from a bigger operation, makes it a little cost prohibitive for them.
Yeah.
The other thing about it too is what type of motors are people using? Are they using a brushed motor? Are they using a brushless motor?
That's another
Different voltages are required to drive some of those motors. You have 18 volt systems, 56 volt systems, 100 volt systems.
Sure.
Right? Unless everyone's using the same kind of motor and the same kind of, you know what I mean? Then you could probably go with a universal battery platform.
Sure. Even if there were just a few, I mean, you think when you go to a gas station, you can get diesel, you can get 87,
Yeah.
you can get 89, you get 91 or 93, right? Some places even have ethanol-free fuel, or maybe they have a kerosene pump. So, I think maybe down to one might be a little extreme, but I more meant like, if they can whittle it down to like maybe 2 or 3 different sizes, or even 3 or 4, and that way, like you were hitting on, maybe there's a couple for brushless, maybe there's a couple for other ideas, and I think that would increase the adoption of it. It's maybe
think
not
so.
the most realistic idea, but
And it'll save a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Because
would.
you're not, like you said earlier, you're not starting all over again.
yep.
Because that's a big risk.
Yes, it is. It
is.
is. So it'll save a couple of.
Or even, it's kind of the double-edged sword of innovation. Like, these brands come out with a new line, and even if you're committed to a brand, when they release their new line, like it might go from 58 volt to 56 volt. Now the batteries are different, the chargers are different, and now you have all these chargers, and might I have the right battery for here or for there, and so I objectively always thought that that there are hurdles to anything, but that might be a good opportunity for I guess if this is really going to be something that has a lot of longevity to it, that's something that they gotta tackle. Otherwise, they're trying to think about if every time a gas powered company came out with a piece of equipment, they had to try and reinvent gas or have a different blend specifically for. And I heard that said once, and I was like, essentially that is kind of a different way of looking at it. All these different platforms, it's requiring a very special blend of gas for it, and obviously some stuff's 2-cycle, but that's kind of where it begins and ends. All right, guys, so we're back here continuing the chat on battery-powered equipment, and we already touched on it a little bit, but yesterday was day one at the Expo here.
It
And
was.
we had a little fiasco outside where we got to see one of the bugs that still got to get worked out in this whole battery-powered thing, where, as Vince touched on, there was a little thermal runaway, and unfortunately one of the brand's battery mowers got away from them, and the
It was
fire,
lit.
yeah, the fire department had to come on out, and the good news is there was no major damage or injuries.
Thank God.
But I think it would be bad of us not to bring that up, because there are some different things that need to be considered in terms of storage and how these batteries and such are handled. And so you guys feel free, why don't you jump in, just let's talk about that a little bit from personal experience.
Well, I think, yesterday's situation, a lot of pressure here on these brands to bring on new equipment, right? So who knows, that could have been a situation where maybe a product wasn't quite ready to be showcased, and then it was demoed and maybe something got away. But I do think it ultimately comes down to quality control of the manufacturing of the batteries, and really the responsibility on a lot of the manufacturers to really research and really focus on how these battery packs are being produced and testing them before going out into production. But yeah, that's my kind of take on yesterday's.
Yeah, I mean, you have something that we're going to run into that, like, maybe you don't see in, like, the cell phone industry,
Right.
would be extreme conditions. Typically a lot of us, at least in this day and age, people spend a bunch of time inside or in climate control facilities, or a lot of people live in pretty temperate climates. But I know from personal experience being in Michigan that batteries and cold don't mix very well. You'll
Usually no.
deplete the charge very fast, and in turn, I actually have to store a lot of those batteries inside to make sure that they're not exposed to extreme temperature fluctuations. And I know you said you're from Alabama, so you're on the other end of the spectrum, where when I'm frigid, you're at least still warm, and then when
Yeah.
I'm enjoying a nice summer's day, you're sweating it out. So
Yep.
do you deal with things on the opposite end of maybe there being some heat issues, and that also being part of maybe why it would be harder for you as a specific situation to implement some of that?
Yes, and you think about it too. Of course, like in our shop, we kind of give a space out for the motors not to have them together, or lay the gas tanks close to the mufflers and things like that. So because of heat, heat
Yeah.
is pretty heavy down there. When you guys are on the 80s, we're down there with 100 degrees.
Exactly.
So
Cooking.
it's
Cooking.
crazy. Yeah, we're cooking. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like an issue too. And after what happened tomorrow, you're like, whoa, you don't want that to happen when you have your other motors, stored with a battery power. And then, so that's one thing that, and I'm sure yesterday some of these folks that are thinking about doing the transition, I think that kind of scared them because, but like he said, that's kind of like the manufacturer needed to look at that really closely.
I'm sure it definitely did make people question it a
Yes.
little bit. I mean, we've had, for our mowers, great brand, amazing. It was an older mower. It was gas. And that thing, internal combustion, no reason, just went off. And our whole trailer, all our equipment went up.
Oh, wow.
And that was gas.
Okay.
So I would say it can happen with both.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's a
it
reason
can.
to be wary, I should say, of both, because it can happen for either one. It was unfortunate that it happened yesterday. I could see how that could happen, but we all know that it can happen at any moment, unexplained, and it's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate.
Sure. Yeah, and I know I've even experienced, obviously we were discussing the extreme of it, of obviously, essentially something combusting and catching on fire.
Not
But beyond that, even I know you were talking about the computer chips in these. I've experienced, even when we get 80, 90 degree weather on some of the chainsaws that we have, if you're doing like a lot of cutting on, let's say, a tree that's already fallen, and you're just bucking stuff up, you run into an issue where the battery almost wants to start overheating, and in turn it shuts down the saw until that battery is cool enough to continue. Have you guys run into any issues like that yet?
I mean, on some of my homeowner power tools, right? I mean,
Sure.
I have like the Milwaukee M18 system. I'm
Okay.
invested in that, and I'll be outside doing some work, and their battery packs are pretty well designed. And if it sits out in the sun, and I go back and I plug it back into, maybe I'm working pulling roots out using the Sawzall, cutting out roots. It won't work. I mean, there's enough charge on it, but there's fail-safes built into these battery packs,
Right.
and computer chips that are communicating, with the battery to protect itself from overheating. So
Yeah.
I mean, there are fail-safes built into it, and multiple fail-safes built into it to prevent those battery packs from overheating and triggering one of those thermal runaways. So
Yeah.
Has that happened to you too?
We've had some jamming happen, but I mean, sometimes those chainsaws get worked. I mean, it's not meant to be a 36-inch monster
Yeah.
chainsaw.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, because the guys actually, again, prefer the battery powered because there's no cranking, you just flip a switch and go, it'll sometimes get used for something more than it can handle. So it jams, and you just work it back out, and it starts going again. But I actually haven't had an overheating issue, thankfully.
Okay.
Not yet, but yeah, it's been running great, and it's been fun because again, it goes back to just clicking a button and going.
I've never had the issue because, like I said, I don't use them as much. So
Yeah. Well, I think what you said there at the end was kind of the key, and that's one of my biggest positives of using battery powered equipment is being like, even this time of year as we get into cool mornings and stuff, certainly internal combustion stuff doesn't want to start as easy. And I know like some handheld equipment, we've literally kind of sat by the muffler on the truck just to let the exhaust kind of pour on it and warm the engine up a little bit. And one of the advantages that I've perceived and experienced is just what you said. You click in that battery and you're off to the races.
Exactly.
And there's certainly something like to be said for that, and that's where like I think aside from the goods and the bads and the size of the companies that you have, or even more just as like the homeowner DIY working around your house, like that lack of frustration of people trying to start. You're almost like tearing your arm off pulling on this piece of equipment, and you can't flood a piece of battery powered equipment, right? So I see a lot of merit for that, especially there's a story my dealer told me where they the coach of the Detroit Red Wings came in and bought a snowblower, and it was gas powered, and the guy's won Stanley Cups, so he apparently knows how to do something, but he could not for the life of him figure out how to not flood the snowblower. And I know he lives up in Canada in the winter months now, but I hope he's come across a battery powered one, because
Make his life a little bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, it was like rinse, lather, repeat. The guy he got really good at flooding it, and all he knew how to do was flood the machine. And in turn, he's gone and invested, $600, $1,000 on a snowblower, and it's clearing zero snow from his driveway, right? So I think that's certainly a positive takeaway. So, any final thoughts you guys want to share before we wrap this one up?
well, just like I said, as in terms of doing big jobs, not there yet. The potential is there, but I think battery life is just not quite there yet. So, but I know it's coming.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of work to do, and manufacturers are going to make it happen.
Cool.
I think it comes down to regulation and policy. California, for example, kind of setting the example. New York probably going to be next, close to it.
Right behind.
I mean, I think ultimately folks are going to be forced into it.
Unfortunately.
But it's good to see these manufacturers staying on top of it and really trying to invest a lot of time, money, and effort into developing products to be prepared for when that time comes, where more and more states, local municipalities adopt some of that regulation.
I'm just excited to see what the future holds, see all the new things coming out, and all potential. There's a lot of potential, and we'll see what happens.
And the place to check them out is here.
Yes,
Equip.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
I think being an early adopter is going to be great too. I mean,
We're hoping. We're hoping.
you're going to be ahead of the curve, and
We're trying to learn as we go.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, but we're excited and we're hopeful. Excited and hopeful. So.
Perfect. Well, thanks to everybody at home for hanging out with us and everyone in the booth here, having a good time here at the Social Media Lounge. And if you guys were interested in seeing a lot more content like this, head over to echomeansbusiness.com where you can sign up and enjoy some fellowship with good guys like I have here and the rest of the UAG members and just this great community that we've built. So hope you guys are taking care, staying safe, and we will certainly see you on the next one. Take care.
Hey.
Guys.
thank you.